On the channel, I haven't spoken too much about my love of racing games and cars. But Crash Team Racing was my first video game love, and that was just at 5 years old, when it entirely rewired my brain. I got lost souping up a Mustang in Gran Turismo 3, fell in love with Initial D's manga and anime, and played Grand Theft Auto V's races online religiously from 2016 to 2018. Along the way, there have been lots of mid to top tier racers I feel like people skip out on. So here I am trying to rectify that a bit, with 5 racers on various consoles that you should know about. Crash and Burn was on the Xbox and PS2. It came out in 2004, developed by Climax Racing, an English studio that was connected to Disney Interactive. Remember those subpar ATV games? Climax did those. They also did Italian Job from 2003, and they were set to do the split-second sequel, which never came to be. Eidos was the publisher, and at that time they actually had money and their own autonomy when releasing the game. Unfortunately, the competition that year won out, with Burnout 3, Flat Out, Gran Turismo 4, Need for Speed Underground 2, and more. So the question was and is, what does Crash and Burn have that those do not? I'd say the gameplay modes are actually better. Burnout may have its iconic crash system and combo shtick, where you set in motion a nightmare of a scene, yet this game has 7 offshoot modes, with the best being Kamikaze, Bomb Tag, and Assassination. Kamikaze is certainly the wildest, with tight circular tracks that has 8 cars going clockwise and 8 cars going counter. The result is absolute chaos, with everyone and thing out to get you. Crash and Burn has great physics, with cars exploding to mere dust, leaving debris you can trip up on, and oil leaks that will wipe you right off the road and into oncoming traffic. The other drivers are also insane and ruthless, with vendettas literally out to get you. When you get hit, you tic-tac until you recover, or some jerk comes up from behind and destroys your chances of winning in the side modes or races. Single event races give you a choice of track, whether it be LA, San Francisco, Detroit, or wherever else, and you get a choice of car, truck, muscle, sport, or compact. Typically, compact cars are better in this game because they have better traction, and they're less likely to be a target on the road. Crash and Burn uses nondescript versions of cars like a Toyota, a Dodge, etc. This saved them much money, and so the game was actually only $20 at launch. If you're someone who really enjoys the look of cars, there's also a lot to do when it comes to putting on front spoilers, side skirts, back spoilers, and car color customizations. There's a lot going on, and I think it's a really good game. I think from gameplay alone, you can see how this game kind of went about its specific quirks. And for the sake of time, I'm going to finish pretty quickly by just saying that the OST is actually really good, with some licensed music, on par with the Burnout and general aesthetic from that time. The Speed Racer franchise is close to home for my dad and I. Every single time he took me into work, I was probably drawing, and I was most definitely watching his DVD copies of Speed Racer from the beginning to the end. Every time he went to the Volo Museum, he ended up coming away with something related to Speed Racer as well. When the Wachowskis directed 2008's live-action film, my dad and I were set. At the time, I feel as though it was a misunderstood flop, but in time, the movie has been celebrated for its design, effects, and schlocky nature that you just don't see anymore. In an effort to increase audience interest, the movie tie-in game dropped on the PS2, Wii, and DS, and even on mobile phones, the same day as the Blu-ray released. The real actors reprised their roles with a story set 1 year after the film. But unfortunately, the story really doesn't go any further than the narrated scene at the very beginning. So I have to be honest, Crash and Burn felt better to play, with R to accelerate, L to brake, B to drift, and A to turbo. Speed Racer has odd button mapping. You use R2 to accelerate, R1 is brakes, L1 boosts health, and R2 boosts speed. The face buttons are all for attacks and spins, with the right stick allowing for stunts. It's a little cumbersome at first, but as you car-foo your way, tricking and skirting around these gravity-defying levels, you'll realize how this is less of a kart racer and more of a full-on combo-oriented fighting game. The manual of the game is a major help in learning better moves to knock out enemies. For example, you can jump on top of a car to gain speed, or you can shunt cars by smacking them right off the track. There's a lot more than that, but those are the two easiest ones. There are also multiple modes, including split-screen action, a tutorial mode, time trials, single race, which is more of an arcade mode, and championship, which is how you unlock more characters. Note that there are cheats to get those things beforehand. Each championship race is about 2 rounds before you get points, which you then use for unlockables. Of course, there are downsides, like maps that repeat too often, music that gets old, and an art style that looks more like the early 2000s comics than the OG manga or film it's based on. Of course, that makes sense, given that there was no way they were going to have hyper-realistic actors, and the anime was not quite as well known as the movie would have been at the time. I think it's just personal preference that I don't really prefer the look of the game. Despite that, the charm of the T180 and acid trip color aesthetic is compelling, and Speed Racer is nostalgic no matter what. The Wii release is exactly the same in all ways, but controls, having you jump and fight with your move motion, is kind of a pass from me. The DS release is more pixelated, but it plays like the PS2 and is more or less impressive. Plus, each game has very different color grading, and I think I love the yellow-orange bathed overexposure of the PS2 version. It kind of reminds me of what the PS3 became later on. Regardless of the downsides, because it's such a cheap game at only around $15 on the PS2 and even less than $10 on the Wii and DS, I'd say if you're kind of just wanting a racing game that you haven't probably played yet, that's the one to go for. Do you remember being a little kid, wanting to buy your parents a gift, and using their money for it? That's what I think about whenever I return to MotorStorm. I actually had to call my uncle, have him pick up the game for my dad, and then, of course, my dad had to send him the money later. See, the MotorStorm franchise started in 2006, published by Sony, developed by Evolution Studios, who died in 2016 after only pumping out racing games. MotorStorm is the 3rd game on the list, but its sequel, Pacific Rift, is going to be the 4th recommendation because it's just that great. The first game sets you up to compete in a festival at Monument Valley, with purely rough terrain that has you off-roading, with bikes, buggies, ATVs, big rigs, and a couple more. This style of racing was foreign to me before seeing this game in action as it came out, and the thrill of dodging sandbanks and hazards is where the maps excel. There are 9 tracks and 15 racers to battle with as mud pits, ledges, and other hazards try to keep you down. One of the things that impressed me the most was how pieces of debris, like lost tires or broken trees, stay on the track, from beginning to end. The car slips and slides with a realistic weight, just as you need to watch how hot that engine gets while boosting, otherwise your car will blow up. Every vehicle looks great, and while the world is a poopy PS3 brown, the depth of field and naturalistic area design is in a league of its own. But it does have a genuine slowdown at seemingly random times, whilst being stuck at 720p. MotorStorm Pacific Rift from 2008 improves in all ways. Better map variety, interesting car mods, more cinematic qualities like camera shake, better graphics, and even more car styles to play with. This sequel is so good that it almost makes the first release skippable. The replayability is also outstanding because of how many routes and medals there are to achieve. And this game will truly make you a fan if you aren't already. I also have to say that some of the AI can get pretty difficult and tough in ways that almost feel unfair with a little bit of rubber banding. Plus, when you have to get medals that only require you to use a bike or a truck, you have a lot of ups and downs to both. Like, being a truck means that you can really run people over, but if you're a bike, while you can kind of take different routes and duck or bunny hop, you're still likely to get nailed very easily from all the other opponents. So you've really got to watch your back depending on what kind of vehicle you are, which adds a lot of tension to every single race. There are 2 more MotorStorm games, Apocalypse from 2011 and the Vita's 2012 MotorStorm RC. I know nothing about them, not even owning them or seeing them in the wild. Regardless of it being physical media, Original MotorStorm has no accessible DLC or updates in 2025. They've all disappeared, making a lot of the interesting maps unavailable to you. To bypass this, there's the Greatest Hits version that will update to the version needed to access DLC, or there's the European Complete Edition. The problem is that the original MotorStorm only goes for $10 used. The Greatest Hits goes for about $15, but get this. The Complete Edition is almost $200, if not more. Pacific Rift does not have this issue, but there are some cars you can't get due to the online mode being shut down. That's the sad reality of consoles getting older, and it seems like that issue is going to continuously get worse. If you're trying to pick up a copy of MotorStorm Pacific Rift, you'll only be spending about $20. Speeding into the last recommendation, or rather, with the inevitable runtime of this video, we're coasting into Toon Grand Prix, a 1997 Sony published and developed project directed by the father of the Gran Turismo series. There is a sequel, but it's only in Japan and PAL regions. Somehow, besides Classic Game Room's video from 11 years ago that's mostly negative, there are no reviews of this game. I'm not sure how. As soon as I saw the mere cover of this title, I was intrigued, and that intrigue was well placed. Though there are things that have aged poorly, mainly the controls. Toon was released pre-analog stick, so square is brake, X is gas, triangle is reverse, circle is select, and the bumpers change views. So yes, it's odd, but it's not impossible to get used to. Just like tank controls are a deal breaker to some, these buttons may also be a deal breaker for you. Before you unlock more, there are 5 tracks, from spooky to theme park to a silly town that kind of reminds me of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Toon world. To accompany these tracks, there are 8 racers, some resembling train carts, motorbikes, and muscle cars. Susumu Matsushita is more well known for Maximo, a weird Capcom game, but his style is almost late 80s American schlock comics like The Tick. It really makes his style stand out from the rest of Japanese work at the time. The modes of the game include free run, time attack, replay, 2-player battle, single race, and championship. Those are all self-explainable, so let's talk mechanics. This is the only game on the list that's a full-on kart racer, something the PS1 didn't have until 1997. You've got the typical missiles, bombs, fire, and turbo powers, giving you 17 items total. Some items help you like the stealth field, while the big, bigger, biggest makes you large, slowing you down and getting you hit by bombs much easier. There are also slipstream mechanics where, if you follow close behind a bumper, you'll gain speed from them and boost past. The AI isn't too tough, and that makes this a good contender for less experienced racers. But if you are looking for a more difficult AI fight, then you can adjust them. Graphically, there's a good amount of pop-in, and honestly, it's kind of a PS1 game that'll look 100% better on a CRT, and not on whatever modern screen you're using right now. I don't think the game will win any awards in the hearts of my viewers, but it's interesting and under-discussed, so that's why it's here. It goes for about $30 complete. Well, that's all I've got to say this time. Now, I gotta go find my dad a copy of the 1997 Speed Racer remake I've never heard of until making this video. Wish me luck, and I'll catch you next time.